Welcome back to another episode of Cape Ann Today. I'm talking this morning with Gloucester Mayor Greg Verga. Good morning, Mayor. How are you?
I'm doing well, Heather. Good morning to you too.
Thank you. So this is update day. We're checking in on some of the city projects and asking you where they stand. Let's start with the Green Street field.
Sure. Green Street is on the CONCOM agenda, Conservation Commission agenda tomorrow, March 1st. And if all goes well there, which hopefully it does, we can move on and the bid package will be sent out. This is for people who might not be familiar. When the East Vet School was proposed, the deal was the Mados softball field would be relocated over to Green Street. So that is the plan. When I first took office, I thought things were moving along, but it turned out that we hadn't received access from the Gloucester Crossing side to get to the field because the field is parallel to basically the backyard of the market basket. And so we did get that. We negotiated with Sam Park and the rest up there. And we have what's called a construction easement that'll allow us to get in and out to do what we need to do. One of the controversies on this was early on, I said I wasn't going to support putting the real bathrooms, the finger quotes, real bathrooms, because of the extra cost. Recently, I met with Ward 2 City Council Tracy O'Neill and some people involved with the Women's Softball League, and we talked about some options. And I had a drawing of the project, and it became very obvious that the sewer connection would have to run from the end of Green Street all the way down through the field. It turned out to be several hundred feet. And I think we were all in agreement that it didn't make sense to do that. But there was a plan B, which was to put the bathrooms closer to Green Street playground, further from the new softball field. And I think that's the compromise we're going to end up going with. So if it gets through CONCOM, fingers crossed on that, bid package goes out, bids come back, we can get started on the project. And for the April 2024 season kickoff for softball, it should be ready to go.
Oh, great. So just in layman's terms, people playing softball would just have to walk to the other side of the field where the playground is, and that's where the facilities would be?
Right, exactly. So instead of doing several hundred feet, we're doing just a couple dozen feet to get from the closest manhole on Green Street to where we'd put the bathrooms. So the added benefit for that is, while it's a little further walk for those using the softball field, it does create restroom facilities for the rest of the Green Street playground area. And it's closer to the neighbors, so it's extra eyes and ears on the facility. We've had vandalism issues with other structures, including restrooms, specifically at Burnham's Field. So having this where it's closer and people can keep an eye on it, that should help with that. So as I said, it didn't make a lot of people happy when I said we're not doing the real bathrooms. But again, I was presented with some options, I presented those options, and it seems like we're in agreement that that's a more feasible approach than, running that sewer line way down to the end of the field or going with the temporary, porta potties that were proposed.
Right.
And it is an added expense, though. I should clarify that $20,000 to $30,000 a year just to maintain those bathrooms. And so that now becomes part of the operating budget for our in the DPW department. So I just want people to understand it wasn't a decision taken lightly to not automatically go for it. But now we're going for it with the understanding that, the maintaining and then winterizing them every year is going to be a $20,000 to $30,000 expense.
That was my next question. And what is the price tag on the actual building of the facility?
The numbers ranged from like 200,000 on up, from the porta potty version up to the sewer line all the way to the field. But originally, before I got here, when the votes were taken to create what became the new East Vet School, it was like a three-part secondary bond. So the city bonded the money to build a new school that would be reimbursable up to 50% by the state MSBA. But there was $4.5 million that was borrowed above and beyond that, which would not be reimbursable. And that counts for three aspects. One is the moving of the field over to Green Street. One is the work needed to be done at St. Anne's and paying the rent for the temporary swing school. And the third is to ultimately raise, as in RAZE, the East Gloucester School once the students have moved out. because there was a transfer of, I believe it was Chapter 97. The protected status of Mados was shifted over to East Gloucester School. So that's set to be open space going forward.
Okay.
So we're on track, on budget, and we should have the kids in there this fall for the new school year.
That's great. So how about the Magnolia Pier? That was actually an issue that came up during your the election season, right?
Yes. So quick recap on that. So it was going back 3+ years ago. The pier was destroyed. Volunteers had done a lot of renovation to it while I was on the city council the last go around. And but those renovations were basically destroyed when a storm came through. So the pier was rebuilt. It's a great structure now. A new float, a recycled float was put in place, and a new ramp was put in place. I'm going to cough. Hold on. Excuse me. Another storm came through, beat the living hell out of the ramp, and destroyed the float. And that's what the status was during the last campaign. So when I took office, there hadn't been any momentum on fixing that issue. There were some dinghies tied to the pier. They were ordered to get off the pier because there was the concern that it would undermine the stability of the pier. So another controversy added on to all this. Fast forward, I was here, it was about a year ago. I started saying, what's going on with the pier? Found out there wasn't much cooking. So we said, let's get this moving. So it's been in design. We did get a FEMA reimbursement for that the last damage that was sustained to it. So that should cover the expense of it. We're currently in the 30-day review public comment period at the Army Corps of Engineers. They are the ones who will give the sign off on doing the new work. So as long as they sign off on it, we get the permitting required. We can get the what do you call it? Our request for proposals out there. We want to do that in parallel with the review period. So when we get the approval, we can have the bids in place instead of waiting to get the approval, then do the bidding. Instead of losing time, we're doing them at the same, doing them together. So once we get that ready, we can start the project hopefully in the spring, and sometime this summer, might be later in the summer, it'll be good to go with the repaired ramp, a new float, and what's called the gallows system. So if you can visualize this, it'll basically, the problem with the storms and the ramp was nobody was there to pull the ramp out of the water. It wasn't an easy process. So now if we know there's a projected storm, this new gallows system, which is what we're trying to get the permitting for, will basically, with a push of a button, just raise the ramp up out of the water for safety during the storm. And then we go back later, lower it back in. So that's where we are. There was a delay trying to get this thing moving, but it's been moving for the last year. But we're not just dealing with slow city government, we're dealing with slow state and federal government. So, but it's still moving along.
So let me just get this straight. FEMA is paying for it. FEMA funds from the last storm is paying for it. The Army Corps of Engineers has done this design. Is that right?
No. We have an engineering firm that did the design, but the Army Corps of Engineers has to sign off on it.
I see. And so, and then it will go out to bid who will actually construct it.
Right. We'll see who comes forward with the bids. Oh, and the other thing we're doing too, Mike Hale had suggested, is we're going to try to do the pre-procurement. So while we await the bids, the responses to the bids, we can purchase the pilings and the timbers that are needed, so they can basically be held on a shelf for us. Mike said it's in Rhode Island. So instead of having procurement issues, supply chain issues, when we get a builder, it's like, okay, we're all set. We have the parts, just need you to put it together.
Okay, great. Thank you. And how about that spanking new welcome sign to the city of Gloucester?
Yeah, that was one we've been getting, starting with my wife when I took office, saying, when are you going to fix that sign? And the city has been on it. That's, again, another supply chain issue. But we had contracted with Seaside Graphics, local sign maker, and other great products. And I think it was last summer, and it just, kept getting delayed. But finally, I think it was February 17th, I got word they were going to come down and put the sign in place. And I happened to show up just as they were taking it out of the truck. If people check out the mayor's Facebook page, you can see some video of the install and photos of them unloading it. And it looks great. It's mostly man-made products, so it should last a lot longer than the wooden sign. We're looking to repurpose parts of the wooden sign. Stay tuned for that. But we're really happy. And there was a bit of some confusions about the species of the fish on the sign. Somehow it got changed over from cod to tuna. I wasn't aware of that until someone pointed it out. Long story short, we're in the process, Seaside Graphics is in the process of fabricating replacement cod. So the tuna will be leaving in another week or so with replaced by fresh cod.
You know, all of this falls under the category, nothing is simple, right? All of
Yeah.
it. Street, nothing is simple. But it's great to see that new sign. And for this particular year, it's kind of special.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wish it could have been done sooner, but it's done now. Well,
Right.
Almost done once the fish get switched out.
Exactly. So one of my favorite subjects, and we would love an update on the new wastewater treatment plant and what was going on with those screw pump issues a couple of weeks ago.
Right. So we're working with a temporary screw pump now. And we're also looking to replace the two diesel screw pumps. A lot of it, I'm sure this is what everybody loves talking about, sewer plant screw pumps, but we're looking to replace those with electric screw pumps. So that's just getting the current primary treatment plant, keep it running because we still need to flush and take care of business until we get the secondary treatment plant online. But we've been talking about since before the election that we've got primary treatment, one of the few remaining facilities in the country that doesn't have secondary treatment. So, I committed right from the beginning that we were going to finally address this. It had been basically deferred for decades. I'm not blaming people who sat in this chair before me. It was an important thing to do, but it wasn't the priority, and the funding wasn't in place to make it happen. So now it is a priority because basically the federal government says no more waivers. You've got to fix this, and we did have the opportunity of the benefit of some ARPA funds. So I plugged in $10 million of ARPA funds to help fund it. We're working with Rep. Ferrante, Senator Tarr, Representative Congressman Seth Moulton, Senators Warren and Markey. Every time I see them or talk to them, I say sewer plant and pushing to get some help because it will be on the ratepayer, anything that has to be bonded. And our sewer rates are pretty high right now. And this is an economic development issue. If we have to, our businesses have to spend a lot of money on water and water treatment, wastewater treatment, it really impacts our competitiveness. So we're trying to find what can we get for grants, what can we get for low interest or forgivable loans. But we will be moving forward with this project one way or another. And we're also looking at the possibility of having a regional approach with our neighbors in Rockport and Manchester. Essex is already part of our system, no matter which way we go. So not ruled in or ruled out for the regional approach, but we're looking at every variation we can to make this happen.
So, we've had this conversation, almost the same one, a bunch of times. So what is the next move? The next move seems to be you need to find out where the funding is for the other $100 million or whatever it's going to be, right?
Right. Well, that's sort of been a nonstop thing, but the next move we're working on some actual engineering drawings, and we did through Senator Tarr and Ferrante through the state got several $100,000 to help with the design and the feasibility. Recently, you recall Seth Moulton got us $2 million to help with that. So I think we're all set with design and feasibility. Now we need some money to help pay for this because, like I said, it would be unsustainable for our city to have our sewer rate go up by 50 or 100%. It just would not be a good thing for anybody.
And you have to spend that 10 million of ARPA funds by 2024. Is that right?
It has to be allocated by 2024, the end of 24, spent by 26. So so at least we know we've covered the 2024 aspect. This project is probably a couple years out and be a couple years beyond that before it's finished. But I think we're in good shape. I don't think we're going to lose the ARPA money.
Yeah,
we'll be able to spend it before then.
I just feel like that's the only thing I can see that's on the calendar. In terms of project. Okay, that's the one thing that's you can pin down, right?
Yes.
So, where do you stand on or where does the city stand? I'm sorry, on the comprehensive planning initiative and the harbor plan. These are, big picture images of the city and the future.
Right. Well, we can start with the Comprehensive Planning Initiative, the CPI, we're calling it. Some people probably be more familiar with another name of the Master Plan. And we had Plan 2000, which was started in like 1999. One of the comments that was made quite a bit during the discussion about the new zoning amendments last year was we really shouldn't be adopting any new zoning amendments like this until we have an update to our master plan. So I'm basically agreeing. Okay, well, the zoning amendments, some passed, most of them didn't. Before we move forward with the new zoning amendments that will be coming down the pike, we are doing a master plan. So it'll be like the focus for the next 18 months or so. So just checking my cheat sheet. The request for proposals has gone out and it's due March 13th responses. Back to ARPA, we were able to use some of the ARPA money to help fund this exercise, as well as fund the implementation of some of the harbor plan recommendations. So, and it flows through the planning board, just like it did in Plan 2000. So the planning board will set up a subcommittee, and I foresee this being just like the previous one in 2000, where there'll be a roadshow throughout the community. In the past, they went to the schools, had people come in, give their ideas. This is what is the community's view for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so we have to hear from the community. We can't just have people sitting in an office sketching out, I think this is what people want, and we've got to hear from everybody and develop what is the path we're going to go forward. And then at the same time, you didn't specifically ask, but the so-called multifamily zoning related to the MBTA communities will start to formulate some of that I see as how it will be made to fit what the people are looking for. At this point, I've been pretty clear. We can't just say no. One of the questions you had sent over ahead of time was about the multifamily zoning and the action plan. Our action plan was due at the end of January 31st. We actually submitted on the 24th. Basically, a very vanilla form, filling out demographic information, and then saying, in a nutshell, we're going to have a comprehensive planning initiative that will help us formulate our zoning, and then it'll flow through the city council. So I had to submit this. Some people say we're urging me to just not do it, but it wasn't an option. It's a law. Just quote what was said by state officials over the last several months since I've been mayor. Law, mandate, requirement, must do, shall do. That really didn't leave a lot of wiggle room to interpret as this is an option. My job when I raised my hand was to uphold the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And this is a law that was, whether or not we agree with it, it is a law. So I did my part. The next step is to do the comprehensive planning initiative, develop some proposals for zoning, and then the city council ultimately will have some public hearings and make votes. That's required by the end of 2024. Being in compliance. We've applied for temporary compliance for the multifamily zoning by virtue of me submitting the action plan. We haven't heard one way or another if we've gotten it. I assume we will, but then the actual compliance will come by December 31st, 2024, once we've adopted compliant zoning ordinances.
So the city will have to go through the entire process of creating these new zoning ordinances by 2024.
That is correct.
So can you just talk a little bit about the process that happened last year with zoning? There was a huge initiative to change zoning within the city, and there was a lot of confusion and a lot of people were upset by it. Yeah. Do you feel as if the presence of a master plan then would have really helped people understand and educate better or plan better? Or just talk to me about that, if there'd been
I mean, I would say it certainly wouldn't have hurt to have the master plan then, but I mean, the city typically is ahead of the curve on what's going to be coming down the pike as requirements from the state. And that's exactly what those zoning amendments were. I mean, they started before I got here. It was the housing production plan was approved, I think, in June 2017. And within that plan were recommendations of how to improve housing, the housing issue we have here. And the 9 zoning amendments were basically what came out of that. The problem was, in the meantime, the multifamily zoning and the MBTA communities sort of started to percolate. And some people conflated the two. Some people just knew they were conflated the two, but it was convenient for them to pitch that narrative. Others just really looked at it as, oh, this is really weird. Why is the state making us do this? But so the problem is we were ahead of the game. And then this other thing came in from the state, and it just helped create a lot of confusion. And people organized and fought the zoning amendments. So the argument now we're hearing is, well, we've already listened to we've already heard the zoning amendments, we've already spoken, we don't want them. It's like, yes, different story. That was our local stuff that we were doing to be proactive. These are going to be what we absolutely have to do. And the fact that we're doing the comprehensive planning initiative alongside it will help us develop something that can, to the best of our ability, reflect what fits our community. Going forward, we have two options. One is be compliant or be non-compliant. Being compliant means you get the carrots. Being non-compliant means you get the sticks. And the previous administration, the governor and the current administration have made it pretty clear that this is not optional. And the one good thing, though, is the new administration is talking more about the carrots, the rewards for doing it, as opposed to just the punishments for not doing it. And so it hits home. So there were three or four funding opportunities, grant opportunities that we would be out on if we didn't do this. And so one of them we used, MassWorks. I think I might have the name off on that. The other two we hadn't used. So people were like, well, just don't vote for them because we don't get these anyway. But then it started hitting close to home because those who were not in compliance the first go around, there were like 5 or 6 communities that were not in compliance. Their housing authorities got hit with a 10% cut. Okay, and so when the new guidelines came out, as we were inching towards the deadline for the action plan and the interim compliance, our housing authority, among others, got sort of like a preemptive letter from the state saying, oh, by the way, if your community does not come into compliance, you too will see a cut. Which I thought was very interesting because a lot of the form letters I got here urging me to ignore the action plan were from people who live in housing authority properties. So talking about hitting close to home, it was like you're asking me to violate the law here, which is directly going to impact you. Yeah. I that's the stick approach that the state was working on. So we'll see what the carrots are. But I was Lieutenant Governor Driscoll at a recent MMA conference, spoke about this and talked about having more rewards and more incentives to actually do it, as opposed to just beating us over the head for not doing it. So stay tuned. There's going to be another. This is just 2023. We're looking at almost 2 full years before we have to reach compliance. And there's going to be a lot of conversations going on between now and then. And I just hope that people are respectful of the other side when it comes time to discuss these, because it got a bit out of hand the last time around. And, we all live here and we all want to make the city a better place. And just assuming that if someone disagrees with you, they're looking for the end of civilization is not necessarily correct.
So how about the harbor plan that's been a project for a year or so now?
Yeah, it's been going on for a while. I mean, I was on the last harbor plan committee back in 2014. So I believe, I'm checking my cheat sheet, the draft has been sent to the state for review and for recommendations. And once it comes back, the harbor planning committee will take a look at what the state said and start holding some more public meetings and public hearings about the final version. So, it's looking holistically at the harbor. And the fact that we've pumped money or have earmarked money from opera to help implement some of the recommended changes should see it through. And I know there's been members of the committee, past and present, have always been concerned that it's just another report we're going to stick on this shelf and ignore. But, we really can't. And this time we've got the money to help us implement and make things happen.
Can you comment on any of the significant changes from the last harbor plan?
I would just urge people, because it's a lot of pages, go to the city's website, Google Harbor Plan, and get all the links to the latest information, see their past meetings, be on tap to see when the next meetings are. But it's a lot of dedicated people, all volunteers. Well, we have a couple of staff people who help out at the meetings, but the committee itself, all volunteers, and just That's the heartbeat of the city is the people who put in the time to do things that we would just don't have the funds to hire staff to do. So thank you, Harbor Planning Committee.
Hmm. And I watched a couple of those meetings. It seemed to be a lot of focus on the zoning, but also climate change and how
Yes.
impact industries on the.
Well, yeah, that is, I think there is a recognition whether or not people are, I've said this time and again, broken record time here, but whether you believe climate change was man-made or as a natural occurrence, at this point, it's irrelevant because it's here and we have to do something. So, whether you want to blame Exxon or whether you want to blame the weather gods, it's happening right now. So we have to be prepared for it. That's why we've hired a sustainability coordinator, someone whose focus day to day is, what can we do to protect our city? I mean, I can't take credit for the barriers going up because they happened before I was mayor over at the water treatment plant, sewer treatment plant, and the high school. That's just one measure we're trying to take to protect our low-lying areas. But the waters are rising. Roger Street was oceanfront at one time, and Mother Nature in the end is going to win. So we need to prepare. And this isn't centuries away. This is decades away. So in my lifetime, it's very different now than it was when I was a kid. And when my grandkids are older, the city's going to be very different on the coastline than it is now.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to bring us up to date on? Or anything tell us about?
Those are the big ones. I just, if people have questions or comments, certainly check out the mayor's Facebook page and Instagram to get the latest info. Feel free to comment on those pages, but we do not respond to those comments on social media. If you want to reach us, call the office 281-978-281-9700 or email mayor@gloucester-ma.gov. That way you're put in the queue. It's all logged in and there will be a formal response. And we're always happy to hear people's criticism, good or bad, constructive or good. I guess that's a better way of putting it. And anybody who has ideas, let us know. The other big thing is we will be coming out shortly with a list of remaining vacancies on city boards and commissions. And stay tuned for that. We'll post that. And if you're interested in serving, let us know. And I guess I'll put in another plug for Music with the Mayor. Thanks to 1623 Studios. We've had, I don't know how many episodes, 6 or 7. We've got 2 in the can that will be coming out in March and then April. We just posted some bonus tracks from our last show, which I play bass with the band Surnames on a couple of cover songs. So you can see that on 1623 or on the Mayor page or on 1623's YouTube channel. But thanks to Tyler and the gang for the work they do putting that together here. So if somebody's interested in being on the show, call the number or the email. I use the email I just mentioned. And if you have 3 to 6 original songs, we're happy to chat with you.
That's great. Yeah. And I know Tyler loves doing it. We love producing it. So
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we hope to talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Heather. You have a great day.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.